What's good, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Before we start the podcast, if you're listening, I'd love it if you subscribed, if you got involved with the community on the podcast, shared it with your friends, gave us some reviews. It helps the podcast go. So thank you very much for doing that. This week on the podcast, the Glitch Mob. I've always been a follower of these guys from an outside. They live in a very different realm of genre to what I'm known for. However, their music is amazing. And they've led a very interesting career from early LA low-end theory days to becoming a band to now going back to being DJs. We discussed all things writing albums, performing Coachella, coming up through the LA scene, Burning Man, early days of Burning Man, to current days. And yeah, I really, really loved this chat. Ed and Josh, great guys, very, very well spoken, very informative and very artistic, which is amazing to hear. The two guys that have been doing it for over 20 years are still so in love with what they do. Super special. So without further ado, the Glitch Mob. Josh, Ed, we're live. What's cooking? How are you both?
How are you, man? It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming on. I'm actually really excited about this because I'm not too sure if you're aware of the podcast or aware of who I am as a music producer. It's kind of in a different world to where you guys sit, and a part of me wanting to do this podcast is to have people from different walks of life, different genres, different kind of aspects of this music industry, and I know the people that listen to this will be extremely excited about listening to this episode. So first of all, I really, really can't thank you enough for coming on. I'm really excited to kind of get into learn more about you guys, if you know what I mean. I love your music. I've been a fan of your music for a long time, but for me, it's always been like, I've never been like a true fan because it's just been so worlds apart, but I've always fully respected of what you guys have done. And I know nothing about you in the grand scheme of things. So like, I'm really excited. Obviously I've done my listening over the years, and I've always, I think we've been on the same festivals, but on different stages over the time. But you know how it is. Yep. You don't get to go and hang out with other people on different stages because we're just in and out. So I'm really excited to kind of hear about some history of Glitch Mob, and also the future of what you guys doing nowadays. So I guess let's start. And I know it's a really boring one for you guys because I'm probably sure you've said this over and over and over again. How did it all start?
Josh, you want to take this or you want me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So Glitch Mob originally started off as just kind of like a loose DJ collective. And we were all kind of playing in the Burning Man scene, like I would say in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I actually met Josh, I would say probably like a couple months before I went out to my very first Burning Man, which I think was probably like maybe 2004 or something like that, or could even potentially have been a year earlier or so.
It was 4 because I moved out to LA in 2003.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So 2004. Basically, I had some homies that were going out to Burning Man, and they were like, you should come out to Burning Man and play some of your music and stuff like that. And you should put up a posting on this website called tribe.net. And I was like, all right, cool. And that's exactly what I did. And at the time, word got back to our former third bandmate, Beretta, that I was coming out. And basically he was the music programmer of this camp, of this sound system camp called Nexus. Back then, the landscape of Burning Man was completely different. Now it's like going to
Instagram.
EDC or something where agents are involved in the bookings of the camps and stuff like that, and it's a very highbrow affair these days. Back then, it wasn't like that at all. There was this sound system camp called Nexus that had a turbo sound, and then there was Josh's camp called El Circo that had this like bag end sound system, and the geodesic domes out there could maybe fit a few hundred people in them. They were tiny, could maybe, I mean, like Josh, like, what do you think? Like probably like 200, 300-ish people would be like a
something like that.
pack 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
So Josh's camp and then our former bandmate Justin, those were the two kind of predominant sound system camps out there. And after that year of going out to Burning Man, it was apparent that myself, Josh, Justin, and a bunch of others at the time were, kind of had like a similar parallel sound that was kind of, it was like one part hip hop, it was one part like, electronic music, but also heavy enough for like the dance floor. It wasn't so abstract like, some like left field pref 73 or like Dobry stuff that it wouldn't work on a dance floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were all kind of traversing similar territory, and as a result, we began playing like a lot of the same similar parties together, especially Burning Man parties.
Yeah.
And eventually, people kind of wanted to put a name to kind of like what this crew or collective was. And basically there was this party called False Prophet, this some like outdoor Burning Man rave. And one night Josh and a couple of the other people that used to kind of like being the Glitch Mob as well too in the beginning came up with the name the Glitch Mob, and it stuck. And basically over time, Glitch Mob went from being a loose kind of DJ collective into actually being a group that made music together. And that eventually evolved into myself, Josh, and formerly Beretta.
When it comes to, first of all, that's amazing. I didn't know it kind of started from the Burning Man days, and it's really interesting because you talk about sound system culture, and I'm from Bristol in the UK. Sound system culture is huge here, with like, especially with in London, like the Jamaican dub reggae scene is just, it is part of British culture, although it's from Jamaica, of course, but like we have a huge amount of Jamaican people that moved to Britain over in the 60s. And sound system culture, I've actually never heard anyone in America talk about sound system culture.
Yeah, well, it was a big part of the West Coast scene, coming
I didn't
out
know
in
that.
early 2000. Yeah, like pre-shiny parties and things like that. It was like West Coast, especially San Francisco, the Bay Area, LA warehouse scene. It was very raw. Whether it was like involved with Burning Man or not, it was like very sound system forward parties. We just happened to fall into this Burning Man scene because that's where we could play this music, and that's where the sound systems were, and that's where it was best received. And for us, I mean, literally the idea of Glitch Mob, the name came from us being a mob, like a crew, showing up to these parties, Burning Man, whatever, after parties, and mobbing the sound system, because it was like what we wanted to do. We wanted to be a part of these sound systems, play this music, super, heavy bass music, hip hop leaning, weird, abstract, cut up, hence the idea of glitch. So yeah, it was very sound systemy to us. And I can remember going to my first couple of Burning Mans and falling into like this crew out there that were bringing folks like Freak Nasty, who was also, in that time, a UK breaks artist.
Yeah.
Tipper, before he got into kind of like the psychedelic realm, he was doing sound system culture out in the UK.
Mm.
Like those were the artists that we were interested in bringing out to
Oh,
Burning Man.
interesting.
And so
Wow.
those guys came and played Burning Man in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it changed a lot of the West Coast scene and sound, at least for our niche of music.
Yeah.
Hearing these guys coming from the UK playing, sound system music, we're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Yeah.
We get
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was also interesting at the time because Burning Man wasn't like the only scene that we were kind of connected to at the time. We were also part of the whole entire kind of like Los Angeles beat scene movement. I was a resident of Low End Theory
Yeah.
in the first few years, and I would bring Josh with me all the time. And Josh and I, we would actually play like super early, kind of like, tectonic and like digital mystics, like dubstep, like
Mm.
super deep, early dubstep before the whole Skrillex thing.
Yeah.
United States style dubstep took off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there was also like that connection as well too. It was really interesting. We were part of the whole Burning Man thing before. Yeah, Burning Man became, well,
Burning Man.
I guess you could say it
Yeah.
kind of blew up and became mainstream, and the superstar
Yeah.
DJs would fly in on helicopters and planes. It was like, before that era, at least a good solid 5 years or so. So it was this interesting inflection point of yeah, super early Burning Man culture when it was viewed as just not cool at all,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and Low End Theory, kind of beat scene era stuff, because the way that happened was I had done a club with Daddy Kev before that called Concrete Jungle, where it was it was like all drum and bass in the main room, and then it was underground backpacker hip hop in the back room, and we got kicked out of that venue, and there was no party to be had for a few years, and then Kev hit me up a few years later, and he was like, let's do a night again, hunted around, and then that's how Low End Theory happened.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because Low End Theory was an icon, like it was iconic. I think it was about 12 years it went on for in
Yeah.
LA.
Mm-hmm.
Can you? I think it's really hard for people to that weren't around during those days to kind of understand how the scene was in LA around that genre of music and the community around that, because it's not really. And I feel the same in house and techno, and I'd love you to tell me if I'm wrong. I'd like to get your views on this, but it doesn't feel like there's real underground scenes anymore, especially in house and techno in the UK, in the US. There are pockets, 100% there's pockets, but there's something about what Low End Theory did, and there's multiple movements that happened in the UK, New York as well,
Sure.
where it was always culture first.
Yeah.
It was never commerce. It was always culture.
Right. Well, I mean, that's exactly what Low End Theory was to LA, to us. It was a place that you could go weekly.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter who was necessarily on the lineup or whatnot. It was just, you just went because you knew it was a place that you could hear so many different types of music, but it all kind of fit in this very, I don't know, left field, underground beat thing, whether it was bass heavy, whether it was, dancey, whether it was just purely experimental.
It was
everyone
like
from
it was
Flying
like
Lotus to
it was like post Dilla music, essentially. After Dilla passed away, there was Stone's Throw had always been such a strong influence of all things, underground hip hop in Los Angeles. And it was interesting, kind of after his passing, it was almost like kind of like backpacker underground hip hop. Like it just I don't know, for whatever reason, but it just kind of went away. you know, like kind of backpacker underground hip hop as we know it, you know, kind of, you know, those style dudes like rapping over stuff, you know, legendary groups like, you know, Living Legends, Visionaries, like stuff like that. It just kind of like fell out of popularity a little bit. Obviously, all those guys are still performing and stuff, but it wasn't what it once was in Los Angeles, you know? And
I think also, I think in along with that, the music industry changed completely on how we listen to things, and also the commerciality got so big in hip hop. Like hip hop went from hip hop was always big, right, in America to a certain extent, but there was always a level of like super underground shit.
Yeah.
But then you have the likes of like Jay-Z, Kanye's, and all of that, and then people can see. We all know like hip hop doesn't necessarily come from like amazing childhoods and amazing areas, if you know what I mean. It comes from poverty. A lot of it does, and a lot of it can be. And I think there was a commerciality that came out of it that was like, oh shit, we can do better with our lives. We don't have to make underground shit. We can then go and make big commercial records and make money, right? And there's nothing. I respect it in a massive sense. When Low End Theory ended, how was that on the scene for you guys?
We actually played the very final Low End Theory as Glitch Mob. Like it was
That's sick.
It was us.
And the very first one. So.
and yes, and the very first one as well too. Yeah, it was the final one. It was us, Tyler the Creator headlined, Toki Monster, who was my partner at the time, Saruda. Yeah, it was pretty action packed. So it was cool to kind of obviously be there in the beginning. Especially with Josh, you know, who in the beginning, you know, I would go down there and like DJ like every Wednesday night at Low End Theory with him, and to close it out as Glitch Mob as well too. Yeah, it was Low End Theory was such a special moment in time. You know, it was like, as I said, it was like it happened in a post Dilla era. You had so many producers that were so inspired by that sound, and it was like the intersection point of like post Dilla music meets electronic music. You know what I mean? It was kind of like post Dilla music converging with dubstep, and you know, Flylo was kind of, you know, he used to actually be an intern at Stone's Throw. You know what I mean? But then obviously being super inspired by, you know, all things Marion Hobbs as well too. You know what I mean? So you had that thing going on. Obviously like the Ed Banger guys taking note of like what was happening, you know, like with Low End Theory, that kind of influence cross-pollinating as well too. We were in the mix there, kind of, you know, with our kind of our kind of sound of like throwing, you know, hip hop, electronic music, bass heavy music, drum and bass and jungle influence, like all into a blender, you know, like we were there, you know. So yeah, it was like a really interesting point in time in Los Angeles. And yeah, it's sadly missed. I mean, Daddy Kev has come back with a new night called Scenario, which is effectively the sequel to Low End Theory, but it's more encompassing than just like beat scene music. It's you know, the scene has changed a lot, and it's obviously it encompasses kind of like underground warehouse rave culture, all the Stones Throw jazz stuff that's happening. Still, obviously, Los Angeles beat scene culture as well too, obviously. But it the blanket covers a much wider swath of sounds, which is inspiring.
It's really interesting when the Skrillex dubstep scene happened. What was your initial view on that scene when it kind of hit America?
Well, it was interesting because we kind of had, by the time the Skrillex dubstep sound showed up here, we kind of had already taken like a big 180 and we're headed down like our kind of like band era. You know, the three of us were like, you know what, like we did Low End Theory. We did all this Burning Man stuff. We were playing heavy beat scene stuff. We were playing all this like chopped up, post Dilla bass music type stuff. We were like, let's just go the other way and do something else. And that was the beginning of this big era of Glitch Mob, which was like the three of us writing music, just not for any purpose, not to make the dance floor move, not to wow people with skill. It was just us kind of like writing more emotionally and not worrying about anything else. And I
Yeah.
think it kind of was like, that kind of all happened at a similar time. And so we wrote our first full length record, Drink the Sea.
Drink the Sea, yeah.
And it just, like it put us in a completely different place.
Yeah.
We weren't playing with the Skrillexes of the world. We were on like the Lollapalooza weird band stages, and like things like that. Like people were confused, they're like, well, we don't know what to do with you guys. You clearly came from like,
over the years.
like beats, bass, dance music.
Yeah.
But now you're kind of going off on this more live performance, kind of more subdued, emotional, heroic, kind of anthemic thing. And it really it put us on a ship, and we sailed out to our own island, and we lived there for a long time. We didn't have the peers around us. Had we kind of had stuck to the whatever, like Low End Theory sound or dubstep sound or what, like had we kind of been in line with what dubstep or bass music was doing at the time, we probably would have been like, tagging right along with the Skrillexes of the world. But we didn't do that. Not because we were listening to Skrillex being like, oh, we don't like this. It was just we had just gotten to this point. We had been doing beats and bass music for so long. We were like, all right, what's next?
How does that feel though, as being part of a community in the Low End Theory days, the Burning Man days, when it first started out as the Glitch Mob?
Yeah.
How does that feel then, going from that to having a real community to then kind of almost alienating yourself to a certain extent in a really interesting way? Like the albums are great, if you know what I mean, but it's very different to a certain extent.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the way that I've kind of always seen it is there's pros and cons to both, right? I think when you're a part of a scene and you feel connection to a scene and you are a member of a community, it can be a great thing because it's a shared experience that you have with your fellow peers. However, that can also lead to heavy competition and climbing the ladder of relevancy. You know what I mean? The counterpoint to that is, kind of when you go in the direction that we did and you exist on your own island, it's literally just you out there. You are doing your own thing. People appreciate you for what you bring to the table. Obviously, the downside of that is there is no shared experience in your community. But as a result, your music kind of doesn't really have an expiration date on it. And you can say what you want to say and do your own thing and make up the rules as you go along. I can't really say one's better than the other because obviously it's like for a long, we started out in, a couple of different scenes, Burning Man and Low End Theory. We kind of went off on our own little island for a very, very long time. And then post-pandemic, we came back to underground warehouse rave culture, and we've been a part of, this scene that's been happening stateside in the United States, kind of sharing in that shared experience with DJs, sending our tunes out to DJs, like doing that whole thing all over again. You know what I mean? So I can't say one is better than the other per se. They're different. They both have their own merits. But yeah, currently this is where we are. And, I think having a shared experience with people is, it feels good right now. So
Yeah, I mean, to kind of add to what Ed was saying is like, when we headed off in this new direction, yeah, it was definitely a couple of interesting / rough years of kind of getting it going. It was departing from something and hoping that this new road is going to work out. You never really know. And luckily it did. It took a couple of years. Once Drink the Sea was out for a couple of years, it finally found a whole new home and new fan base. And it was interesting because, the low end theory and Burning Man culture fans weren't those people.
Yeah.
It was a whole new world of people that fell in love with our music and continued to support us following Drink the Sea. We did Love, Death, Immortality, See Without Eyes. It was all different extensions of this thing we were saying. And those people, they were on for the ride. They were like stoked, They were like, this sound is what we've been looking for. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of like see the fans come and go, with the different styles that we've been trying over the years and the different, paths we've taken. So yes, it's not been an easy road. It's been a very interesting road.
I think that's the whole point, though, that there's something about it that I really, really respect, because it's not easy, and any road is not easy, right?
Sure, of course.
Especially in the music industry, it's like, first of all, you have to make good music. Maybe not so much nowadays, but you first of all have to make very good music. That's the hard bit, and then getting people to listen to it. And from an outsider's point of view, you built your own community. The Glitch Mob fans were their own community, and there's something that so many artists don't ever do that in their career. It's kind of a piggyback off a scene or off a record label, or even for me, like my first slice of success was off the back of Dirty Bird at that time. But it's then, what do you do with that afterwards, and how do you kind of tell the story of your artist journey after you decide to depart that? And by doing an album straight out of that, was that the goal, is to let's write an album to then go do our own thing, or was it a slower process?
I think we wrote an album because we just had something to say, we weren't really thinking about, is this going to sell well, or are there going to be iTunes downloads from this, or you know what I mean? Like, I think it was. I think we were like really kind of trying to define who we were as artists and musicians at the time, and I think Speak From Our Hearts. It was a record that took a while to write. It wasn't like like, here's the master plan, boom.
A lot of kind of like trial and error, and it was the first time we were writing music as like, oh, we're a group now, we're a band now, we're a trio now. Like before, we were all just like writing beats in our bedrooms and coming out to the parties and playing what we had made or what we had found or what we had edited. It was like every man for themselves. Show up. What do you got? Okay, cool. This was our our focused trio energy, being like, what could we do as three producers that have been making, this kind of like left field bass music, dance music stuff. And Drink the Sea was just what came out. It wasn't like, oh, let's use these techniques or let's make these tempos. It was just, we got together and we spent a year plus time just, I don't know, just hanging out, figuring it out, and trying different things and trying new plugins and trying new ideas.
What's that process like? as a trio, as somebody, as three friends working out what's next in the life of creating art and a career?
Our third bandmate always used to have this expression of saying like a lot of it is like, you know, just like throwing spaghetti against the wall and like seeing what sticks. And I think when you start out in the beginning, I think there's going to be a lot of that. You know, you really have no idea what you're trying to say until there's that kind of like aha moment. You know what I mean? And I think the same was for us. Like we had no idea really that Drink the Sea was what it was going to be until maybe we were like a couple songs into it and we were like, okay, this is the vibe. And then you kind of begin essentially kind of building the world and the narrative behind it. You know, obviously like we knew that we wanted it to sound timeless, and we knew that we wanted it to be something where it was like, you know, like, was this made in the 70s? Was it made now? Like, you kind of can't really tell. You know what I mean? But those ideas don't come until, you know, there's kind of, I don't know, like you kind of have like those one or two North Star demos that kind of like point you in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When did Modular Gear get involved?
Our modular journey kind of started, I guess, maybe like pre-pandemic. Yeah, I think when I was living
we had
with
that studio.
Exactly.
We had that studio in Highland Park, and you had picked up like our first case basically and put together like a little.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How much time did you waste?
Every waking hour. Just been like totally obsessed with it. It's interesting because our modular journey kind of started in from like the opposite end, you know? Started with software modular, with reactor blocks and stuff like that, and getting like really hooked on that, and then eventually purchasing, you know, our first few modules. And now here we are. It's obviously like a big part of what we do. It's how we perform live and everything. And I love it. It's incredible. Josh loves it too. So
clearly I've not gotten into it yet. I'm I'm trying not to. Like I look at it every day and I'm like, oh, I really want to buy that. I really want to buy that.
Well, you have a lot of keyboards. So that's kind of just like, it's the same kind of addiction, but just in a different kind of way. For me personally, it's like, I don't have space for keyboards. So modular just makes the most sense because it's the most economical on actual physical space. And it allows you the most options, the most ability to constantly try new modules, sell old modules easily. Like if I started accumulating keyboards, that would be pretty rough. I know that would just be a slippery slope and bad news. Like I would probably have to devote a whole room to just having keyboards.
Well, dude, you're moving to Vegas, so you're gonna have the room.
There you go.
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe I'll get into it. We'll find out. You know, we'll see.
Yeah,
I'll keep you posted.
So performing live when you did the Drink the Sea album, how was that conversation, and how did that evolve over the years of what you guys did? Of like, okay, we're in our own little world, we're performing on these like weird live band stages at festivals. You've built a community around you guys. Like, how does that evolve from show one to now, if that makes sense?
It was super hilarious actually in the beginning. Our very, very first live performance, like live as the Glitch Mob, was the Coachella Sahara tent. I forgot what year, but it was our first time playing Coachella. We were sandwiched in between Rusko, who went before us, in peak Rusko dubstep era, you know, Cockney Thug era, and then this collective, what was it, Josh? It was like Club 76, right? It was like the whole Ed Banger crew, like all the Ed Banger dudes, Cassius,
Busy P.
Busy P. One of the dudes from Justice, Somi, like all those guys.
Yeah.
And then us sandwiched in the middle of that, playing our weird like Pink Floyd psychedelic electronic music, barefoot in the Sahara tent playing instruments like bass and guitar, mind you. So it was so funny, and people were just lost. They're just like, what the
Yeah.
hell is this? And it was so funny because, you know, it's like our management was telling us at the time, they were just like, are you sure that's like the look? Like you're gonna go up there and play your entire new album that we haven't even heard yet, and nobody else has heard, and you're gonna go up and do. In our minds, it was like, this is a genius idea. We got the biggest gig of our lives. Let's go into the Sahara tent, play all this new music nobody's ever heard. In our mind, it was like clear as day that it was just such a good idea, and like we got up in there, and people were just confused. You know,
Yeah.
and it was such a humongous learning lesson in that moment, especially in a gig like that, of like, oh yeah, okay, maybe going up there and just like playing like all this music no one's ever heard of before is maybe like not the best look in a gig like that, like, you know, Coachella
Yeah.
Sahara tent, you know. And it taught us a lot in that moment. But that whole year was kind of hilarious because that kind of set the tone for the whole rest of the year, where we went on tour doing that thing, playing bass and guitar all over the world, you know, Europe, everywhere. And people that were fans of the old Glitch Mob sound, like, you know, kind of the glitchy, bass heavy, like electronic, like hip hop inspired beats, were just like, what the hell is this? And
Mm.
it was like kind of like a grim first year. There were definitely moments where we're just like, damn, are we gonna have to like hang this up or something? Or like what? Like, damn, maybe we made like a bad decision on like, you know, trying to say something like this as artists, and like maybe we fucked up, you know. But the funny thing was that like in the midst of all that, I guess we had just kind of like, the record had really caught on, and we had gained all these fans that we didn't know existed, and those people would all kind of come into the fold in the second year
Yeah, the
of
second
touring.
year of touring Drink
Yeah.
the Sea, I remember us kind of hitting the first few shows, and it was like, oh wait, people are like singing along to the melodies, and like they knew the music,
Yeah.
like it was
Yeah.
clear, like, oh okay. And those following few years, like playing Drink the Sea, it was amazing. Like that's what
Yeah.
people were there
Mm.
for.
Yeah.
You know, playing guitar, playing bass. We had, you know, V drums. We had touchscreen lemurs. We had like, you know, we were doing this quasi live band electronic thing, and yeah, like post what Ed was talking about, like it was like, okay, now it's clear that we made the right choice.
Yeah.
And we were off, like I said earlier, like on our own island doing this
Mm-hmm.
thing, and kind of like left the Burning Man low end theory, you know, dance music's scenes of the world behind, and kind of
Yeah.
like started playing theater venues around the world, you know, and we're touring like a band would for years and into the two records after that. And the
Yeah.
show just kept developing. We would find new technology and instruments to play. We would find new ways to perform all of this music, um, all kind of hinged off of that very first, let's go to Coachella and just play this live music and see what happens. And then it just worked after that, you know, like that was a very rough year, but after that it just kept going and going. And fast forward to, I don't know, probably like what, 5 or 6 years later, we're playing, you know, I don't know, second or third to close Coachella Sahara tent with our
Yeah.
huge stage
Mm-hmm.
production,
Yeah. The
packed
Blade.
to the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you couldn't, there was not a single space for another person to fit in there. And it was slamming, like every single person
Mm.
was, you know, locked in. And it was kind of like, okay, cool.
It
Yeah,
happened.
it happened. It worked. All this crazy stuff that we had like decided to do continued to work, continue to work, continue to
Was
work.
Yeah. Was that ever the goal? Was there
Uh,
Mm,
ever a goal?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. It wasn't necessarily a goal of like, let's let's start this thing so we can be the biggest band playing Coachella. Well, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think everyone is a little bit has that in the back of their mind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to be big so I can survive off of this, so we can make a living, so we can continue to be artists. Obviously, there's people that could care less about doing shows or touring, but shows have always been a big part of Glitch Mob. Like, it's obviously we love making music. We make music regardless, but like putting on shows, the energy of a show, the energy of ourselves on stage, being with each other on stage, having a good time, performing, putting all this, into it. Yeah, it was a big part of the Glitch Mob history.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say yeah, yes and no. I mean, there was definitely a moment when we wrote our second record after touring Drink the Sea for a few years, seeing what he was doing, seeing where electronic music was headed.
Yeah.
There was a clear moment to us, I guess around 2000 and I don't know, 14 or so, where we thought, let's make the next record of like what we're doing intentional for the Coachellas of the world.
Yeah.
That was one of the few moments where we saw what was happening. We saw what was happening with us, with music, and we were like, let's do this specific thing and make a specific sound that'll just put us in that moment. And that's what we did, and that's what we ended up playing Sahara Tent, like nighttime, Saturday night.
Can you remember that process of like, okay, you've done album 1, it's done what it's done. Album 2, can you remember that initial like spark of like, this is what we need to do to get to here?
We just need to
Well,
turn the highs up a lot more.
well, it was more of a feeling. I remember the second album, we specifically wanted to be like the big inspiration was like how do we do Glitch Mob's version of like stadium arena music? Like that's what we were going for. We're like, what's the sound that's going to be the soundtrack to be played in Red Rocks or something like that?
Yeah.
And that's what we were going for, and yeah, Love, Death, Immortality. It ended up being like a really kind of like heroic, like badass, kind of like hard hitting record as a result. And, it kind of came like in the right place at the right time. It was like, there were a lot of parallels at the time that were kind of saying similar things. Nero with their record,
Yeah.
it was just kind of like, in the just post, like, Square Like Scary Monsters, Bright Sprites era stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, Justice was like about to drop their second record or something like that. There were kind of like a lot of parallels that kind of like lined up well. Rat-a-tat, So yeah, we were just kind of in the right place at the right time with a sound that kind of made sense at that point in time.
How important are albums to you guys as a creative outlet and also as an outlet for your fans and your community? I think especially in electronic music, albums aren't necessarily something that a lot of artists do.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's clearly been important to us because we've written many.
Yeah.
I don't know if we feel the same way today, per se.
Yeah.
Not to say we won't make another full length record or anything like that. It's something that we've always done. And us both being in our 40s, that's the era that we came out of. Like albums, even back when we first got into electronic music. Like there were many early drum and bass records, like the Ronnie Size record, things like that.
Yeah.
It was like those were full records. We'd listen to them top to bottom when you're kids. It wasn't like, oh, this one song by them. It was
Yeah.
obviously when we got more into actually DJing and collecting vinyl and things like that. Yeah, sure, you'd find like singles and whatnot. But the albums felt important to us because it was our way to say a lot and say many feelings. And you know, we're emotional humans, so we had a lot to say, whether it was,
Yeah.
you know, uplifting and heroic and energetic, or melancholy and, you know, heart achy, or whatever it was that we were going through. We would put all that into the music. So the albums just made sense because we could say all those things, which you can't
Real
say
life.
with one single. Exactly.
And I guess that goes on to my other question. Like I'm really interested with people that are in groups. Was you guys were a trio, and now you guys are just doing it you two alone. How do you sustain a relationship that is healthy throughout your careers?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I
Because
think
we all change, right?
sure, of
We all
course,
change. Like from 2010, I know you were doing it before that, but from
exactly.
2010, that's 14 years ago. Like a lot of relationships don't carry on for 14 years, let alone an artist relationship. Like
Sure.
we all change in life. Like Josh, I know you have outside hobbies. Yeah, I know you do other things. Ed, I know you do other things. It's normal life,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
How do you kind of go through that?
Well, I think we're lucky. Part is because we're lucky. You know, we've lucky enough to find, you know, each other. Justin also, you know, he was just as close as brothers as Ed and myself are. Yeah, you know, we were lucky enough to find other people that we felt um, a really close kinship to, a friendship, a brotherhood. Um, that was it. That was really where it came from. You know, us going to Burning Man and just messing around and just, you know, doing things like that and having fun, and um, it just started this friendship and this brotherhood that, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because people have asked us this over the years, and it's really I mean, it's kind of hard to answer because it's just naturally what's happened with us. You know, it's like
Yeah.
me and Ed we're best friends, we're brothers, we're business partners. You know, like we're family. Like to me, I see it as like I would much rather throw Glitch Mob in the garbage right now than our relationship. Like to me, the relationship between me and Ed, well, that's the long lasting thing. Like, you know, I know I'm gonna go to my grave, be like, yeah, that's my dog. That's like my
Yeah.
day one. You know,
Love
Glitch
that.
Mob. I hope I can say the same when I'm, you know, nearing the end. But yeah, my point is that we've always kept it about our relationship, and then let kind of like, yeah, everything kind of come from there, you know.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah.
So important, man.
Josh is he's essentially like my male wife. Like he's like the closest person that I've had a relationship with. We just don't sleep with each other. You know what I mean? But
There's always time, lads.
but
There's
he's
always
like
time.
Never know.
I mean he is literally like the closest person to me after all these years. It's the one relationship that has outlasted every single other profound relationship in my life. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So yeah, I think it really starts there. And as Josh said, I think we've been extremely lucky that I think that we've found each other, and we're compatible with each other. There's no drama. You know, we've all got our heads screwed on straight and everything. And, you know, yeah, I think everything has always been about, beyond just kind of obviously supporting each other on a personal level,
Huh?
has always just been about the greater good of what we're trying to say as musicians, and starting from that place. You know what I mean? Um, Focusing on what we can control and not what we can't control. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
Mm.
none of us can control how much money is going to come in from the music we make, from the shows we play, blah blah. You know what I mean? The only thing we can control is, at the end of the day, is like, is the music that we're making, are we stoked on that? and do we have a good time getting up on stage and playing it for people? That's the only thing we can control. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, everything else is out of our control. And, we've been very, very fortunate to have been on this wave this long.
How long? I really like that. But going from what you just said, Ed, has it always been like that? The sense of being able to control the things that you can control and not worrying about the other things. Because
I mean,
countless, like, what's that process? Because I know that's not something that happens overnight
for sure
to kind of get to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, time, and age, and
for sure.
experience.
Perspective, all those things. I mean, I think when you're younger, you're always going to kind of like, be thinking about more how you can game the system, so to speak, you know what I mean? And try to make the songs that are going to like smash big and stuff like that. But you never know. You really like, there's no quantifiable way to say like, because I've spent 20 hours tweaking this snare drum, as a result, it's going to yield X amount more dollars or X amount more streams or success or a collab with this person or that person or whatnot. There's really no way to tell. You know what I mean? So, I think as we've gotten older, I think we've gotten like a little bit better of, just letting the music be what it's going to be and not trying to overproduce it as much. I think like these days, it's kind of like once the vibe's there, let's just button it up and just like get it done and like, move on to the next song. There's so many songs that, we have the potential to share with the world in our lifetime. If you just spend 20 hours, like, marinating on that one snare drum sound, you're just going to like miss out on all the opportunities to say more. So I think that kind of perspective, like really only comes with time in the game, honestly. And agreed. I think as we get older and older, I think Josh and I, it's much more important for us to kind of have said everything that we want to say before we hang it up than to, be in the mindset of like, this needs to be the perfect diamond. Like this snare needs to be like no snare of all time. You know what I mean? Like kind of the things you get caught up in when you're a much younger producer.
Yeah. I think it's also the case of the fact that you've proven to yourselves that longevity is the key, right? It's just the fact, the art of just carrying on is, and it will eventually work out to be what it needs to work out to be, and you have no control over that. It's the most beautiful. I mean,
it's industry. like we're the three of us. We're also fortunate. I mean, we just got the best jobs on the entire planet. It's like we are fully in love with music every single day we wake up. We are creating or engaged with music in somehow, some way. It's a miracle dream job. I mean, if anyone was in this position, they'd want to try to prolong this for as long as humanly possible. So,
yeah, we're pretty lucky.
Yeah,
we're pretty lucky. When kind of staying on that subject, you have lives outside of the glitch mob, right? You have artist careers, you have lives, and you have families, etc., etc. How does that kind of coincide with what you guys do as a career as well as together?
That's a good question. Yeah, interesting. I think that we have both chosen so much of this path that the kind of, I don't know, the outside lives and the kind of typical path that maybe most people head down, we just have not. We have really immersed ourselves in this thing half of our lives at this point. Like Glitch Mob is, we're in the 20-year mark of doing music. Like maybe without, the name came around, I don't know, 2007 6 or so, something like that, maybe 7. But like, yeah, we've been out here for the last 20 years doing this, and not much has changed, honestly, with our lives and our lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's like, this
Yeah.
is, sure, we have hobbies and we both do things outside of the studio, but something that we kind of talk about a lot is just, like, yeah, we're in our 40s. This is what we have been doing. This is what we're still doing. This is what we plan to do. It's hard to say what other stuff outside of music, outside of Glitch Mob, outside of this, artist path would, you know, step above,
Even look like.
yeah, or like look like, or like
Yeah.
become more important to us than this. Not to say that that won't happen, but thus far, this is just what it's been. And yeah, a lot of the life choices and decisions that we've made um, always come back to this, because
Yeah.
it's been just kind of all that. I mean, that's all I know personally.
Yeah.
I
No, I
dropped
get
out of
it.
school. I started doing music, and this, it's 2024
Here
around
we are.
11:30, 20 years later. It's like, this
Yeah.
is my life. This is my path. This is my life.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have kids. I don't. Of course, I got my family back in New Orleans, and I love them, and I see them when I can.
Yeah.
But man, this is it. It's like, I wouldn't know what else to do. I hope that I'm
Love that.
saying the same thing when I'm 60. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just making tunes. Making music, making art, whatever it is, whatever it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing thing, because, sorry to add quickly, just, but like, I think we're so lucky to be able to say that about what we do. And I think it's so hard for people to hear that don't have that. And we're very fortunate to be able
Sure.
to have that passion that, like, no matter how much money this brings in, we'll still do it.
Exactly.
We'll still turn up in that studio and tweak some knobs and work on that hi-hat for 2 hours.
Exactly.
Like, it's still, and it's such a, yeah, we're so lucky to be able to be in that situation where we found something in life that we have that passion.
Yeah. I think, well, I guess for people who are listening in who aren't full-time musicians and would like to know what it kind of is like, I would say it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse at the same time. As I said before, we have the most amazing job of all time. It is a very untraditional job. There is no like clocking out at 6 p.m. or anything like that. It's like, at least, for me, and I think Josh as well too, we eat, sleep, and breathe the music. And it's like, it happens when it happens. And especially obviously with the schedule of how, gigs work. I mean, you're a DJ yourself as well too. It's like, it's a night owl affair. It's like a late night thing constantly, so it's got very unorthodox hours. As a result, kind of normal everyday life can be difficult to accomplish and pull off, um, a life with like, kind of, I'm not saying that it's impossible, because Josh and I have had partners at various points in time. But, kind of like a life with, kind of having that, just kind of like deep, meaningful partnership in that kind of way can also be extremely challenging due to just the, I guess you could say, just kind of like, what's written on the tin or the conditions of the job environment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a blessing and the curse. Sometimes I look at the average person that's, just got a 9 to 5 and, they're married, they got a couple kids and that's life. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes like, I'm not going to lie. Like I envy that a little bit,
Totally.
because I know that most likely that's not going to be my life. It's like, I've committed my life to music. Like I know that I'm going to be making music till the day they put me in my grave,
Yeah.
and yeah, as a result, it's a very different and untraditional lifestyle than I think what most people would live, for better or for worse.
Well said,
No, I totally
well said.
agree, and I can relate to that massively as well. I was literally a conversation I was having with my manager, like I think like probably about 3-4 months ago, and I was like, I really want to get my knuckles tattooed, and he was like, go do it, and I was like, yeah, but like I'm never gonna get a job if I get that done. I'm never gonna get a real job, and he was like, dude, you're never gonna.
You're
get
not going to get a real job
like,
regardless if you got tattooed or not, bro.
Regardless of that, and like I think deep down inside we know that, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but there's again, it goes back to what you were saying. Is like there's still that sometimes there's that when everything's being thrown at us, and this is not hard. We don't have a hard life, if you know what I mean. Like we have it very good, but when the pressure is on, sometimes I wish I could just slam that laptop down on a Friday and forget about it all weekend, and wake up on a Monday refreshed and go, okay, let's tackle this work week.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
No, yeah. It doesn't happen that way at all. Because obviously, as a musician as well too, it's like you get out of it what you put into it. It's not like clocking into a 9 to 5 at all, where you got a boss, you do your job, maybe you do a little bit better, you get a raise at the end of the year, yada yada yada. It's not like that at all. It's like, it's you literally get out of it what you put into it, and sometimes you actually don't get out of it what you put into it. You put so much into it, and it doesn't exactly yield the result that you thought you were going to get. Hence, the whole idea of like, only sweat what you can control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you got to pick up and try it again the next day,
Yeah.
And hope
that's the thing.
Like
that's the thing.
You got to get, there's no one making us do this too. You know?
No.
And that's one of my struggles. Like, man, I'm super grateful for Ed in this project, because that's my big part of my accountability, right? Like, I have to get up and go and work in the studio because Ed's probably doing that in the other end. I don't want to leave him hanging. I want to put in my part. But yeah, like you said, it's not a hard or bad life. It's incredible, but it's still, there's still parts about it that we struggle with, just like anyone else would in the world,
100%. 100%. How do you guys, over the years, build your teams out to kind of to help you achieve the most amount of things you guys can achieve? How is that kind of
teams? Did you say
worked?
teams?
Yeah, teams.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, we've been with the same people for a very long time. I mean, Taylor's been with us for a really long time. Our manager Kev.
I know Taylor's listening. Sorry.
Our manager Kev has, I mean, he's effectively been with us since like pretty much day one of Glitch Mob, or like when we actually first started getting like legit bookings and stuff. And our agent Steve, he's been with us basically since day one, since when Windish Agency existed back in the day, and obviously they've kind of merged like 2 or 3 times over since then.
Wasserman.
Exactly. So we believe, I think, much more. We've always kind of come from the place of like going with the ethos of kind of being with good people, as opposed to necessarily like being with the people that might potentially take you to the top. You know what I mean? So the people that we do have in our corner, we firmly believe that these are some of the best people. You know what I mean?
I mean,
these are
family
good
at this point,
good human beings. Yeah, they're fam. It's like I would take a bullet for these people. And I think that goes a really, really long way. And I think vice versa on the other side as well too. Hopefully they could say the same.
I think in the creative side, there's definitely been, lots of different artists that we've worked with that have come and gone, and kind of like but even those relationships have all felt very organic, and unforced. Whether it's working closely with a friend, a longtime friend, or um, friend of a friend or whatever. But yeah, we've
Mm.
kind of similarly tried to keep it about the art and keep it about the vibe, and kind of just keep kind of like tapping into that thing, being like, okay, does this feel right? Does this feel like the vibe? Is there some sort of real connection here? Some sort of like
Mm.
real, um, just like same pageness with the whole thing.
Yeah.
We've never really approached any of it with like, oh, this is the best, most popular X, Y, and Z. That's what we should do. You
Yeah.
know, just kept the main thing about the main thing. Just keep it about the art. Whether it's like someone in their bedroom making something with us, or if it's the most top dog that there is, as long as it's like a real art connection. And yeah, it just feels very truthful. That's just kind of where we've always approached this whole thing.
Mm. I love that. All the people.
All the people.
What's this about?
Yeah, well, I think all the people is, to kind of jump back what we were talking about earlier. It's like we hop back in the boat and we sailed our asses off that island and got to mainland because we wanted to mess with all the people. We kind of, as the pandemic led up and Glitch Mob was shifting, Beretta had stepped down to do his own solo career. Ed and I, we got excited, about the idea of tapping back into community, tapping back into the underground, tapping back into our roots. We
Mm.
came out of rave culture as kids. We came out of
Yeah.
jungle side room, drum and bass room. That's where we were when we were going to the raves. We were.
Mm.
That's what we were collecting as teenage DJs, buying, Moving Shadow records and stuff like that. Yeah, it was us kind of deciding to, yeah, kind of like do our part to be a piece of this community. And
Mm.
all the people was just a place for the music, and something that has grown from when we started a couple of years ago to now. It's become a lot more, where it's, we see it as a not only a record label for our music, but you know housing other people's music and using it as like a community platform in whatever way we can. Hopefully
Mm.
it'll turn into more more events, more this, more that. We're not sure yet. It's still in its infancy,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's our version of, um, a record label that we can do with our friends.
I love that.
Hmm.
Love it. We've just done an hour and 10 minutes. I think it's kind of perfect to end it there. And I'd love to do a part two
Of
whenever you
course,
guys ever want to jump on.
anytime.
Before we go, how can people get involved with all the people? How can people get involved with the Glitch Mob? How can people kind of come and see you guys, follow you, etc., etc.?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, we're very DIY thing over here. We do it all ourselves. Us two, Taylor, Kev, our buddy James, who's now part of the team. But yeah, it's, there's no frills about it. Anyone can holler at us. Anyone can send us music. via Instagram, whatever's easiest. Yeah, we're kind of just trying to keep this thing all about the music, all about the culture, just good vibes, and anyone's welcome to check it out and try to be a part however they can. Yeah, we're starting to do more all the people parties around the country right now. We got a nice little tour set for the next few months.
Cool.
Really pushing all the people sound, the whole rave revival, the underground scene, bigging up all the young guns doing it. Anyone that's kind of making, interesting kind of like rave centric music, in in the format that we're up to, which is pretty like broken beat, break beat, jungle, hardcore, and beyond. It's the walls are ever expanding. We'll see what happens, but yeah, we're working on a 2-volume compilation right now for all the people. It's currently reaching, I think, 31 or 2 songs.
Damn.
From folks from all around the world, and yeah, that's going to be coming in the next few months. We got a bunch of new music on the way. We just dropped a new single on Friday called High Resolution. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and yeah, we anyone that wants to be a part, just holler. We'll do our best to
Sick.
Do what we can do.
Amazing, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. Hopefully I will catch you somewhere in the States when I'm over there. Sure. It'd be great to catch up in person.
Yeah, if you're ever out in LA or Vegas coming soon for Ed, but
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, give a holler.
Definitely. No, I'd love to. Thanks so much. Keep safe, and I'll catch you very soon.
Cheers.
Sounds good, my man. Take it easy.
And that's a wrap. Big love to the boys for coming on. Thanks for listening. Please give us a review. Please share. Please subscribe. Till next time, people. Big love.